Guys, it's no coincidence that good English students tend to do well in legal studies. No matter how well you know the information, the way you express the information is going to play a large part in your success. With that in mind, I want to give you 3 core tips to writing legal studies answers. Number 1 is really simple. Write full sentences, and if the mark allocation or space on the page demands it, use paragraphs. For example, if you get a 6-mark question saying, describe the strengths and weaknesses of the adversary system, I would pick 3 elements of the adversary system and talk about a strength and weakness for each one. For example, I might write 1 paragraph on the judge, 1 on legal representation, and 1 on the burden of proof. I would devote 1 small paragraph to each element so that the examiner automatically thinks, okay, each paragraph contains a strength and weakness, 2 marks per paragraph. The point here is to make it as easy as possible for the examiner to award you marks. The second skill is to use examples. In fact, I would strongly recommend that for each topic in the course, you have at least 1 source, legislation or case, to back up your arguments. When providing examples, don't just say what it is, but state how it applies to the concept or point you're explaining. Question 4A of the 2013 WACE exam asked, what is meant by a political right? It was worth 2 marks and 6 lines were allocated to it. An answer could look like this. Political rights protect people from being interfered with unfairly by the government or other groups and ensures that people can participate freely in their political system. That would give you the first mark for essentially defining or describing it. The second mark would come from either building out the definition or by providing an example, such as, for example, a political right in the ICCPR is the right to vote. This is a right that cannot be interfered with by the government or other groups. The third skill is to pay attention to verbs. Most questions will have a verb: outline, explain, describe, evaluate, assess. All these words are different and require different levels of depth in your answer. For a question that asks you to outline something, all you need to do is describe it. On the other hand, a common error that drives examiners nuts is students answering questions that use the words compare or evaluate and not discussing both strengths and weaknesses. One example is question 11 of the 2014 VCE exam. It was worth 6 marks and asked students to evaluate the role of the parties in the adversary system of trial. The key verb here was evaluate. To evaluate, I used 3 steps. Firstly, identify the strength or the role of the parties. Secondly, I'd explain why it is a strength. Thirdly, I'd explain a corresponding weakness. For this question, the first part of my answer would get me 2 marks and would look like this. Parties have control of the preparation and presentation of their case, including finding witnesses and gathering the evidence. This is a strength of the adversary system because courts do not have to incur any of the expenses associated with the investigation of the case, making it cost effective. However, this is also a disadvantage in that the high cost incurred by the parties themselves may actually discourage individuals from pursuing legal action, which impairs on access to justice. I'd repeat this same structure twice more for a 6-mark question. Then it's important to come to a conclusion that is consistent with your discussion. Another element to this is the adverbs used in questions: how, why, what, which, and so on. It is absolutely key that you actually address these words and what they're asking you. Question 22 of the 2014 HSC exam asked, how are human rights protected by the Australian Constitution? It was worth 5 marks. In this exam, many students identified which rights are protected, but didn't actually explain how they're protected, and therefore they didn't actually answer the question. Remember these 3 elements: write clearly, provide examples, and pay attention to verbs. These stylistic elements will serve you in the exam when others are rushing to get their answers out. So guys, your action steps for this video are simple. Keep practicing. You set yourself a goal and number of practice papers to do last episode. You need to continue going through them and using the feedback loop to consistently improve. I've also put a resource below which will help you work out what each of the key verbs mean in the context of exam questions. And for HSC students and WACE students, Check out the expansion videos to see how to approach multiple choice questions and essay questions in the exam. See you guys in the next episode.